This is George Dionne for KNAC.com, and I'm here with the Berserker BLÓTHAR, vocalist for GWAR. If I knew absolutely nothing about GWAR, how would you describe the band's music to me?
Well, the band is a group of space aliens banished to the planet Earth who perform very theatrical heavy metal, punk rock, rock and roll. There's a strong emphasis on the theater, right? It's a performance project in a lot of ways. So, but the music's hard, it's heavy, it's like I said, very influenced by both metal and punk. It's a lot of fun. I mean, that's the main thing to understand, is that GWAR's not super serious, even though I think we wind up saying some important things, mounting some kind of a critique that matters. We do it by having a good time.
Absolutely. And your latest album is The New Dark Ages. It's taking on issues in the world around us with a little storyline behind it. I mean, basically, it's a story of how mankind has become so stupid that we've kicked ourselves back into a new dark ages.
That's it. And, along the way, we do have the graphic novel that goes with it that fills out some of that stuff too on the record. There's also an element of reality fracturing, right? That's on the record and in the graphic novel, where we basically just treat every conspiracy theory like it's just absolute truth, right? The world really is as crazy as people say it is now. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. Humanity has kicked themselves back to the dark ages with just in these attitudes and the things that you see, and in particular, the conspiracy theories that have origins back in the dark ages and in anti-Semitism. A crisis of faith and magic and science and communication technologies, all of these things. A lot of the discussions are discussions that you can read in the fancy writing where the P's are F's. Going back, and the S's are F's, going back to the dark ages.
Normally, I ask people about, the meanings of their singles that are out now. I don't think Motherfucking Liar needs an explanation. I think that's pretty dead on what that song's about. So maybe we'll go with Ratcatcher and what that song's about.
Yeah, that's cool. Ratcatcher, in keeping with the Dark Ages theme, right? We wanted to have in some ways, it's an origin story of the slaves of GWAR. And we attached that to, it's sort of late in the medieval period, but it is a medieval story, the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. And, something happened over there, some sort of cultural trauma that managed to last hundreds and hundreds of years with all of these children disappearing. And they've proven, it's not just a myth. A bunch of kids disappeared because they built monuments to it, and there's discussions of it in the records of the town. GWAR, being GWAR, we showed up during that time period and occupied the position of the Pied Piper. It was us. And then in our own mythos, we've kind of used it to explain how GWAR came to have all of these human or subhuman servants that we have.
Fair enough. And going beyond that, Berserker Mode is another song that you have out, and that's sort of GWAR recognizing their new secret powers.
Yeah, definitely. That one is one that really goes more with the novel, the graphic novel, where I am the character of BLÓTHAR is getting in touch with. Basically, what happens is that BLÓTHAR meets his alternate self in an alternate reality, and comes back from that experience having gained the power to transform physically when he goes into a berserker rage. So it is a sort of origin story for BLÓTHAR the Berserker, just like Pied Piper is kind of an origin story for the slaves. So yeah, it's fun. It's going to be fun to put that one on stage. I'm going to have my shield talks now. It's an actual character in the show. Blothar is going to just turn into a big gigantic monster. That's kind of a spoiler, I guess, but people will flip out.
So which came first, the graphic novel or the album?
Well, I mean, definitely the album. We were working on it before the graphic novel. We did it. We had been, putting it together, and then the pandemic hit. So it really didn't take us 5 years to write an album. It's just that there was about almost 2 of it where we couldn't really do much except for trade tapes back and forth. The record was pretty much in reasonable shape, at least musically, and with ideas for the lyrical themes well in advance of when we started working on the graphic novel. But we let the graphic novel and also the pandemic and all of the things that were going on in the world, we went back and changed a lot of stuff. It's interesting, a song like Rise Again, which is about a sort of new civil war, and also about an undead army of Civil War soldiers rising up out of the ground. That was written before all of the George Floyd protests and before they started tearing down the statues in Richmond, Virginia, and all over the South, and where they had these kind of lost cause monuments. So we had to alter that song in a lot of ways to reflect those happenings. The pandemic really did a number on the world. War.
You brought in Hailstorm's Lizzie Hale for the song
Cutter.
Cutter.
Yeah.
How did you get her involved? She doesn't seem like someone I would picture with GWAR.
Well, I think that's why, I mean, she's a super, super dynamic performer. Lizzie is, and a great songwriter, a great singer, a great guitar player. She's just great. And we share a manager. We have the same manager, and we had put her on our. We were doing a little kind of like a podcast thing, but it was really just a YouTube show that we were putting together. And Lizzie was on there as a guest, and we brought her out to do. We wrote the Cutter, and it was a song that had a strong sort of central character that was a female. And sadly, I would like to change this in the future, but right now GWAR doesn't have a female character, and we haven't for a while. So we tapped Lizzie to do it.
One of the things that I noticed about GWAR is that over the last maybe 5 to 7 years, that GWAR is becoming a little more, I don't want to use the word soft, they're still heavy, but I want to say more accessible, more polished, more appealing to a broader audience. Is this something that was done purposely, or was it just how you've developed over the last 20 or so years?
Both. I mean, I think there's more. I think the world changed around GWAR in some ways too. In other words, a lot of the things that GWAR championed and put forward early on in our careers, that sort of controversy and those modes of expression have become more common in society, and so that gives GWAR more access to the mainstream. So in some ways, the mainstream changed. Maybe even more so than GWAR changed. But certainly the band did change, right? We survived the loss of our lead singer, who was the principal lyricist and had a certain sense of humor that he used that was an acquired taste and that I loved and GWAR fans loved, but was polarizing. And the guy's gone, and we don't want to just, if we were to try to do that again, it would just look like a cheap imitation of that, right? So the band, as you suggested, just sort of developed towards what it is now. And we still try to keep, one thing that's still there is there's still commentary, there's still humor, there's still a narrative. It's just maybe less, I'm not even going to say obscene, because there's a lot of obscene things. There's a lot of objectionable things. I mean, the song Ratcatcher is what sounds like an Alice Cooper song about keeping children in a basement, right? But it's the story of the Pied Piper, right? That right there should tell you something. I mean, these modes of expression have been around a long time.
The new Dark Ages is released on your own imprint, Pit Records. Your last studio album was on Metal Blade. Was there an issue with Metal Blade that you decided to go on your own?
Absolutely not. GWAR is just there again. Things changed around us, and we could still be on Metal Blade, would still be on Metal Blade. They're wonderful people, extremely important in the history of metal. Brian Slagle is a giant in the history of heavy metal in the United States. But things have changed, and it's harder and harder to make money. Labels make less and less sense for a band that's not, we're not trying to break GWAR in a sense. It just makes sense to do it ourselves.
So going back to the Dark Ages about society getting stupid and mankind becoming more dumber, I noticed that you had a couple of big bundles for this album and they sold out. Somebody paid $5,000 for a bundle. Somebody paid $6,000 for a bundle. I got to say there's some insanity there.
Yeah. And NFTs too. I mean, the perfect, talk about commentary. The most ridiculous product that you can imagine. And yeah, people are buying it, but they're getting something special. I mean, in both of those cases, those bundles had one thing about GWAR is that we don't pay. This isn't Slipknot. It's not Kiss, right? We're not paying fashion designers or special effects artists. Those people work within this band. That's what it is. The people that make our costumes are as much a member of this band as me being the lead singer. So having a piece of that art, I would think that really $5,000 or $6,000 is kind of a bargain, right? This is handmade stuff by professional sculptors who would they choose could work in the film industry, but they're making crazy props and costumes for GWAR.
Absolutely. It's quality product, no doubt about it. But I was told we didn't have that kind of money, but apparently some people do.
You're right. I mean, I don't know. And I don't know if it would happen now. It's interesting. Things have definitely gotten tighter. But I guess it wasn't too long ago. Yeah. $5,000 or $6,000 seems like a lot, but people have collateral income. What can I say? Maybe they don't have kids.
You guys are doing the Black Death Ranger World Tour, your first world tour since the lockdowns. I mean, obviously, there's got to be everybody coming to the shows probably a little more rabid than they were prior to lockdowns.
Definitely. And there's a lot of people coming out. And it's interesting. I mean, we went out when the lockdown had just kind of been lifted, and we were seeing a lot of people buy tickets and then not show up, which was an odd thing. And we weren't the only ones. I mean, that was happening across the industry, these sort of no shows. Now, yeah, the shows are selling out. People are crazy to have a good time. So it's a good time to be playing music. But probably the only hard thing about it is that absolutely everybody who has a band is out on tour.
It's true.
Yeah. So you can't find technicians, you can't find buses, you can't find all that crap.
You gave away a little bit about the stage show with your new shield. And I know typically some celebrity is brought up on stage during a GWAR show and they get their comeuppance. Any indication who that might be this time around?
Well, on the tour that we just did, we had a wrestling match between the Red Scare and GWAR. The Red Scare being rootin' tootin' Vladimir Putin and President Xi of China in a tag team wrestling match, and that was a lot of fun. And I think we'll probably still be dropping some elbows on those dudes when we do this tour coming up that we're getting ready to do in Europe. And but as far as next year, we're actually still writing that show, the show that follows the album. The characters are in the graphic novel. They'll all be there, but there's always a celebrity who shows up, a celebrity or two. So we'll see how the world plays out. Who knows? We've been killing Biden on stage as well. He wanders on stage and loses his head, and then Putin and Xi. Those are the two most recent ones.
Now you got to get him riding in on his bicycle and falling over, and then getting his comeuppance.
Yeah, and then have Putin ride in on a horse. No, yeah, it's a lot of fun. He just kind of wanders out. It's funny because we're doing the voice for Biden, and it was really hard. I had to do the voice, and I actually wound up just looking it up on the internet because I'm like, how do you do an imitation of Biden? I mean, it's easy to do Clinton, it was easy to do Trump, but I do those voices a lot of times. And voicing Biden was hard. And what we found that worked was just acting like you're 150 years old. That's the voice that worked.
GWAR finally got the documentary treatment in the documentary This Is GWAR. It's going to be streaming on the Shudder network shortly. Was this something you put together? Did somebody come to you and said, hey, I want to do the history of GWAR?
Yeah, they did, and they didn't do it in a self-serving way, and I think that's why we wound up going with them. I mean, there's certainly been a lot of people who approached us about doing films, but this group of people, a production company from Austin, some of them we knew. They had been in a band that we toured with called American Sharks, and they offered a chance. Really what they were saying was, let's partner and do this. And that made a lot more sense to us. And I think they got a lot more truth and a lot more value out of that arrangement than could have happened. And we're very happy with the documentary. I think people are going to learn a lot about GWAR from this film.
So it's a warts and all kind of documentary. It's not, hey, we're awesome. It's here's the struggles and everything along the way.
Yeah, I mean, we told the guy we're not interested in hagiography, and we couldn't really do our own documentary. I mean, because that's exactly what it would be, right? It would be so. If we're going to make a film, we're going to make fiction. Having somebody else do it, yeah, and it's interesting because with a documentary, it's all about editing, but it still needs to have that same arc of struggle and conflict and all that stuff. And it does. It's for us, it's kind of hard to watch it, to be honest with you. But I think people are going to like it.
As you can see, I am a whiskey and bourbon aficionado back here. And how do I get my hand on Catoctin Creek's Ragnog GWAR Rye?
You pronounced every single part of that wrong.
I know.
Catoctin Creek is the distillery, and they made a rye whiskey that we're calling Ragnarok Rye. And, they're located in Percival, Virginia. GWAR is based, our human base is in Richmond, Virginia. It's great. We've been able to go up. They just dropped a bunch of barrel heads off at the studio today for us to sign. And it comes out, ryes are sort of an up and coming thing. And, or at least, they're not, I guess they're not as chic as bourbon, but they're getting there. And Catoctin Creek does a really good job with that booze. It's very tasty, very subtle. And that we have little bottle caps, and eventually we want to put out These little bottle toppers are cool. They're like sort of, they look like pewter, but they aren't. And each one, there's each member of the band has a bottle top. And then the label now is the album art from the New Dark Ages. Eventually, we'd like to get into the old porcelain decanters, like my grandmother had, that, it was a horse or a matador, and his head would always be twisted around the wrong way. So maybe we'll do that one day.
You just got to get distribution up to New England.
Yeah, man. But that's the biggest thing. And we have a beer that's out too. And that's only in Virginia. So we're trying. We are trying. It's all about deals and distributors, and it's confusing. I don't pay any attention to it. I've got music to write.
So for the sequel to the graphic novel is GWAR and the Duoverse of Absurdity. In the sequel, are you going to meet Doctor Strange in the multiverse of Marvel?
Well, it's interesting how fiction or how reality has started to reflect fiction. And for us, the multiverse really represents a kind of loss of truth, right? Nobody really knows what's real anymore. They can't even agree on basic tenets of reality. I think that's one way we wound up in the New Dark Age. I think the Duoverse is going to continue as a trope and as a way for us to put GWAR in new and different situations. But yeah, we're trying to stay away. We don't, Marvel's not a company that we want to inspire a lawsuit with. We'll stay away from their universe if they stay away from ours.
Now, my first freelance assignment was in 2001, and it was covering a GWAR show in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I had the chance to interview Odorous at the time. Great guy, fantastic time at the show. I had no idea who GWAR was, and I certainly got my fill of GWAR that night. And I've gone on to interview Pustulis, and today I'm talking to you. And if there's one thing I've learned in 20 years is that this hobby has gotten me nowhere.
I think that's probably yeah. I mean, I'm sure you had a good time, at least talking to Pustulis and Odorous. A couple of great guys, very funny. But Worcester, we've had some great shows there, and GWAR has a long history in Massachusetts, going all the way back to the Green Street Station and the Causeway Loft. Is that it? I don't know. There was
That's an old one.
Yeah. old days.
Absolutely. But, I say it all in fun. I love talking to you guys. I like how GWAR is sounding today. I mean, I like the little more polishedness, accessible GWAR, and you guys got a great album with the New Dark Ages, and I hope to see you live one day. And that's all I got for you today. Thanks for speaking with KNAC.com.
Hey, thank you.